Looking to take your financial knowledge to the next level? You're in the right place. Welcome to Ask Ralph, offering accounting, technical, and financial advice. Whether you're looking to save taxes or improve your business, he's got you covered. Here's your host of Ask Ralph, Ralph Eastop Jr.
Hello and welcome back to the Ask Ralph show. We are certainly in the midst of tax filing season, and we do this show every week to give you some insights in areas of tax, in areas of business, and other related topics. My name is Ralph Eastop Jr. I have a small accounting practice in Middletown, Delaware, so welcome to the Ask Ralph show. Today I thought I'd talk about how scammers try to steal your money, and there was an article in this week's Delaware News Journal by Jerry Smith, where he highlights a great deal of information about how scammers try to steal your money. And it's that time of year, so it's a good time to think about this. You know, the IRS, Internal Revenue Service, let me be correct, has a simple message for those who believe they are getting a call from the IRS representative demanding payment. Hang up. He quotes IRS Media Relations Specialist Cecilia Beretta. The IRS does not call to ask for payments or personal information over the phone. So that's the big thing here, folks. Remember, the IRS is not going to start off by giving you a phone call. Now, that being said, you may end up getting a call from what they call a local revenue agent. But trust me, you're going to know that call's coming well before that call comes, because you're going to be receiving notifications and you're going to be getting all kinds of, letters and things like that, because the IRS doesn't move slowly. So you're going to get those things. So at this time of year, the IRS is reminding taxpayers to beware of scam artist criminals who use devious tactics to steal personal information that allows them to falsely claim refunds and potentially run up bills and drain bank accounts. This lady from the IRS, Beretta, says that the identity theft remains a top concern for the IRS. So think about that. Like everything else the IRS has to deal with, identity theft is their top concern. And the key to all of this, and I've talked about this before, is never give out your Social Security number, credit card number, or bank account numbers and passwords to anyone who calls claiming they're from the IRS. Look, and don't give them to anybody who calls, to be blunt. There's absolutely no reason for you to share that kind of information over the phone. Now, that being said, if you call someone directly, like for example, if you call the IRS directly and you're asking them for assistance, well, then obviously you're going to need to give them some information, but you made that call, and don't do that, based on an email you received. So here's the top 5 things the IRS says scammers often do, but the IRS will never do. So you need to acquaint yourself with these things so that you know about them ahead of time. Number 1, they are never going to call to demand immediate payment, nor will it call about taxes owed without first having mailed you a bill. I talked about that a few minutes ago. You are going to get that dreaded "you owe us" notice. You're going to get that "we're going to levy your accounts" notice. You're going to have at least 90 to 120 days ahead of anything that's going to happen at the IRS level. Another thing the IRS will not do is demand that you pay taxes without giving you the opportunity to question or appeal the amount they say you owe. That's built into the system, folks. If the IRS says you owe them money, then you're going to be given an opportunity to figure out, is that correct? You're going to be given an opportunity to file an appeal and discuss it. Another thing, they'll never require you to use a specific payment method for your taxes, such as a prepaid debit card. From my experience, the IRS is going to want you to either send them a check and come into their office, or you can go online and actually pay it there, but they're not going to give you a specific prepaid debit card. Think about that for a second. That's somebody just trying to scam you. They're never going to ask for credit or debit card numbers over the phone. The IRS is not allowed to do that. So they're not going to ever ask you to give you their credit card, or ask to get your debit or credit card numbers over the phone. And this is I don't think it's funny, but it's a funny one because I've actually had a client that was affected by this. They're never going to threaten to bring in local police or other law enforcement groups to have you arrested or even deported for not paying. A few years ago, I had a client that received a telephone call, and she ended up calling me and got, talked to my office manager and get me on the phone. But she had received a call, and the caller basically said they were calling from the IRS, and that if she didn't give them a payment over the phone, they were going to come and arrest her. So believe it or not, my client actually got in her car and went to the grocery store because she was scared to death to stay at home, and called me. And I said, listen, this is a scam. So if they're asking you they're telling you that they're going to come and, take you away, or the local sheriff's going to come take you away, that is absolute nonsense. Listen, if you are under criminal investigation by the IRS, you will know it. Guys we in the trade, we call it the guys with the gold badges are going to show up at your place. You'll know it. There's not going to be any telephone call threatening you ahead of time. So what are some top scams that the IRS is looking at right now? The top 5 common scams. Number 1 are phone scams, and that's the IRS, people calling, impersonating IRS agents where they threaten arrest, deportation, or other unpleasant outcomes. Like she says here, and this guy says in the article, Jerry Smith says, never give out your personal information over the phone unless you initiated the call and you're sure you're dealing with a real IRS agent. So that's why I say make sure you're calling the IRS phone number. The best one to use, 1-800-829-1040, 829-1040. Don't, assume that you get an email that looks like a IRS email, and that happens sometimes. And they'll send an email and they'll have a bogus phone number, and they'll be like, well, I got this email from the IRS. It must be correct, but it's not. Number 2, phishing. And that's where the IRS does not email you or direct you to websites regarding any bill without prior contact. Now, that being said, you can go to the IRS and set up an online account with them, and you can pay your tax bills and respond to notices there. But the IRS isn't going to initiate that. So you have to be really careful about it. If you get any kind of email like that, just avoid it. Fake email is another big one. Beware the scam pretending to be from the IRS online. The scam email carries an attachment labeled tax account transcript or something similar, and the subject line uses some variation of the phrase tax transcript. So you think you're getting a transcript from the IRS. Don't open the email, because the malware known as Emotet, E-M-O-T-E-T, can spread throughout a business network and potentially take months to successfully remove. So that's a big one. These fake emails, these phishing scams. Number 4, false claims. Sometimes you'll get a scammer calling offering false claims for phony tax credits, non-existent rebates, or even refunds based on a taxpayer's Social Security benefits with little or no documentation required. My grandmother used to tell me, if it sounds too good to be true, it is. If you get one of these calls, hang up and call the IRS to check on your situation. And finally, another big one we talk about is fake charity donation requests. And we see these happen a lot when there's any sort of natural disaster, whenever there's something that happens in the world. Let's say there's an earthquake or, tornadoes or something like that. This is when these scammers come out of the woodwork and they set up these scam, charities, and they go and look for money, So there's a couple things you can do with that. First of all, be aware of it. Secondarily, watch the names of these charities, because a lot of times what will happen is they'll use names that are similar. Like I'll give you a funny example. United Way is the legitimate charity, but they could be using United Ways or something like that. And the IRS has an online search tool called the Tax Exempt Organization Search, where you can actually go in there online and check it out ahead of time. Now, my belief is don't ever give donations over the phone anyway. It's a bad idea to give information over the phone at all. So I hope this was helpful. I hope you tune in for our next session, but we talked a lot today about how scammers try to steal your money.
You've been listening to Ask Ralph, brought to you by Sazio Accounting Plus. Please subscribe to and rate our podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a rating and review. Our podcast is produced by Carolyn Peters. Thank you for listening, and be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Ask Ralph Media. You can also hear me each week on 1450 WILM and on 1410 WDOV in Delaware, and on the iHeartRadio app. Submit your questions or ideas for future shows by sending an email to AskRalph@AskRalph.com.
The information contained in this episode of Ask Ralph is based on data available as of the date of its release. Sagio Accounting Plus and Ask Ralph Media Inc. is under no obligation to update this content if changes occur. Applying this information to your specific situation requires careful consideration of all facts and circumstances, and any information provided is not to be considered as financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult your tax advisor or attorney before acting on any material covered.